I am a member of parliament in the National Assembly of Namibia. But of course I speak in capacity as president of the oldest political party in Namibia, SWANU, and also on my own behalf. With those few words, as you see, the topic that is before us is actually learning from history, but more specifically looking at the responsibility of Germany with regard to the genocide that was committed in Namibia. Now, in the words of late Patrice Lumumba, and that I want to just quickly share with you, is that the day will come when history will speak. Africa will write its own history. It will be a history of glory and dignity. And that is to dovetail in with the discussion that ensued just before we came to the podium. Yes. Basically, this paper, or my presentation, has tried to, in the first place, answer the questions of genocide as to how it is actually committed, because we are told that it is actually systematic and planned, what form it takes, what direction, what proportion, and methodologies that normally are taken into during the process of genocide. The answer, of course, lies in what have already been identified as the 9 stages of genocide, and I shall not dwell on all those stages, but I shall limit myself to the 2 last stages, and that is one of extermination and the one of denial. Yes, please. Now, since denial has continued as a stage in the Namibian genocide today, the relationship between Germany and Namibia will remain superficial. And I'm going to explain to you what I mean that genocide has continued in Namibia until to this day. And that is because of the definition of what denial of genocide is all about. And I shall share with you in a moment. So that relationship between Namibia and Germany will remain superficial until such time that genocide has actually been acknowledged. And we also have looked at various forms of reparations that I will share with you. We can continue. Now, let me start by saying there is, I'm told, a Nigerian proverb of the Yoruba people which states the following, and I quote, "If you go to a place that no one has ever been to before, you will see what no man has ever seen before." Now, in Namibia, in 1904 to 1908, is the place where both the victorious and the vanquished, and even, it's gone. Okay, we can't get it. Right, and even the downtrodden have been to that place that no one ever has been to. And that place is what is called the Herero Nama genocide, or in short, the Namibian genocide. Because it happened for the first time in the 20th century, for the first time in Africa, that is a place where both the victors and the vanquished have been to for the first time, that no other person in Africa has been to before. And that is the genocide in Namibia. No. Before that, please. Yes. Now, just some coincidence of what I've just observed. Namibia-Rwanda genocide. That is the genocide that took place in Namibia and the genocide that took place in Rwanda. You can see those coincidences. The Namibian genocide took place in 1904, the Rwanda genocide in 1994. The difference is 90 years. Common denominator is 1, 4, and 9. But strange enough, both of these countries were German colonies, former German colonies. I don't know why genocide had to take place in former German colonies on the African continent. Yes, please. Now, what then is genocide? It has been described variously. And that is that place that exists at the final limit of destructive human experience. That is one definition. And of course, the word genocide was coined already by Lenkin in 1943 from the root words of Greek, genos, and the Latin word of side. So that is how genocide actually came to be put together. But that is not to say that was the first time that genocide happened. That is just the word genocide origin. Yes, please. Okay, you can proceed. Genocide is also defined in 1948 by the United Nations. But that is, again, not to say genocide only happened after 1948. That is a time when the United Nations was established. But then it took into account the crimes that were committed before, like the Namibian genocide, the Jewish Holocaust or genocide, in order to come up with that particular definition. And that is including all those things that have been enumerated. I'm going to go a little bit faster because of time limitations. Yes, please. Now, the 9 stages that have been identified as being the process normally that are found in the during the time of committing genocide include the pretext, classification, symbolization, dehumanization, organization, polarization, preparation, extermination, and denial. Again, in the interest of time, I'm not going to expand on all those, but I'll be talking about the denial stage, the last stage of genocide. Of course, we do know that there are some economic models that are available, econometrics and so on, to be able to assist us to calculate the loss that, on which basis we can demand reparations, not just the moral aspect. My colleague from Namibia talked about the moral aspects of reparations, but there are also econometric models on which we can base our losses, particularly the economic losses. So it is not something that perhaps it's not a guesswork. It can be based on some scientific outcomes. Yes, please. Yes, some of those methods, maybe to start with the fourth one. No. Back, please. Yes, maybe we can state that one there. A fourth approach, after we have the first ones there, would be reparations in kind. For example, guaranteed schoolings beyond the high school level, or medical insurances and so on and so on. A fifth approach would be the use of reparations to build entirely new institutions to promote collective well-being in the victims' communities, hereros and namas in the case of Namibia. And the sixth mode is to compensate the state of the victims for loss of capacity and development due to loss of human resources and other resources. There are many different methods, even starting from number 1 to number 3 there. But these are not mutually exclusive. It is not that reparation can only take one form or not the other. You can have all of those forms of reparations as a collective or as all of them put together, depending on what the victims themselves actually demand and what they need and what they would have arrived at. So basically, I'm not also being descriptive to the Namibians as to what form of reparations they should actually demand. I'm just availing possible methodologies and from other experiences of what others have received in terms of reparations. Some countries have received either all of those forms or some of them and so on, and therefore, so the menu is available for Namibians to consider. But of course, the victims themselves will have to determine what exactly do they want. Yes, please. Yes, we can proceed on that one. Now, the reparations that are being demanded are not based on, again, hearsay or something like that. There was an extermination order, as it was already cited, one in October 1904, and another one in May in 1905. the first extermination order by General von Trotter, of course, who was acting on behalf of the imperial German state, is the one that you see there. Then the second one was specific to the Nama people to be exterminated. And these were not just words being expressed. The figures are there to give evidence to that extermination order, or the both extermination orders. The Hereros lost about 80% of their people. The Namas lost about 60% of their people. And for all intents and purposes, the extermination order was actually meant to wipe out those two population groups in Namibia, and hence the extermination order as they were given, and also the reparations that people are fairly and justly so demand. Those are just pictures showing the German soldiers guarding their prisoners. Yes? Now, the last stage, as I was to expand a little bit on that, is the denial stage. And when I, at the beginning, said that denial as part of genocide still exists in the Namibian context, or in the Namibian genocide context. First, maybe the definition. Denial is the final stage that always follows the human catastrophe. It's the most diplomatic stage of genocide. It is the calmest, it is the most academic, it is the most imaginative and the most eloquent, and yet, in the same breath, it is by far the deadliest. But mark my word, genocide still exists in Namibia. Can you proceed? Yes. It is a mixture of outright and reflective negationism. That is, it acknowledges that the genocide occurred, but denies any participation of one or other group in its perpetration. Its proponents typically deny involvement of their own countries in the genocide. Can you proceed? The German minister who was quoted here, Ms. Heidemarie Voetsorek-Zuel, ascribed the genocide to General von Trotter's behavior and not to the German imperial state. Hence, she declined reparation. Instead, she offered increase in economic cooperation. So that is that part of denial definition that we are talking about. It is the most diplomatic, it is the most silent, it is, you know, a German minister coming to commemorate the 100 years after genocide in Namibia says or ascribes a genocide that was committed by a German General von Trotter, who did not act on his own behalf, who did not use his own resources in order to commit genocide, but used the state resources, acted on behalf of the state. In the middle of the year, that is in June, the former general who was there, General Lutwin, was actually replaced during the middle of the war because he was not conducting the war according to the wishes and desires of the imperial state. They then brought in General von Trotter to do the job as they desired it to be done. And the end result of this job was genocide. So now, how do we ascribe genocide to one person called General von Trotter and not to the state that facilitated his coming to Namibia, funded him, and allowed him to do whatever he has done to our people? So that is the denial aspect of what I'm saying. Proceed, please. In 2011, skulls were taken from Namibia. Some, of course, many skulls of the people who were skinned, as my country woman also described it. Many skulls remained here in Germany. What is strange is that the skulls and the remains were not handed over together with the documentation, together with the results of the experiments, because they were brought here not as viewing objects, but they were brought here as scientific experimental objects. The results, the documentation, to whom did these skulls belong? Why were they taken or brought to Germany? All these documents and evidence was not presented together with the skulls. It's part of denial. You can have the skulls, but you wouldn't be told what was the purpose. So there was no genocide, therefore. Yes, please. Of course, Germany is offering Namibia what is called the so-called special initiative. That is, they are looking at what they term as the population groups that they had a special relationship in the past, and they are offering these people some, I don't know, livestock, goats, cattle, and some other things and so on. And for them, that is not to compensate, that is not to do reparations, but just to bring about some relationship with the people that they had a special relationship in the past. That is part of denial of the genocide. Because for genocide, you don't have a special relationship with specific people, but you have reparations to pay for the atrocities that you would have acknowledged. Okay. Okay, you can proceed. One more. Yes, in Namibia, the place, one of the places in Windhoek, we call it in my language Orumborwaka Shombondi. That is the place of indignity. Instead of acknowledging that place as a place where genocide had taken place, the colonialists had built a school, the Alte Feste, the Christus Kirche, and the rest of them, in order to give it a more gentle, humane sort of outlook. But of course, as she said, we are not going to forget and rest. We are still going to dig up our own history in terms of what Lumumba has advised us. I'm about to finish now. Of course, the apology that was offered somehow by the former Minister of Economic and Development and that day of Hamakari, we look at that as presumed apology because it was not an apology coming from the official German government. It's not an act of parliament. It was just her own. In fact, somebody from the crowd, as she was finishing her statement, shouted, "Where is the apology?" And then she said, "All what I have said is tantamount to having apologized for the atrocities." She didn't use the word genocide. Germany has violated all those conventions and all these provisions before. The Geneva Convention and the Berlin Act, the Hague, all these articles that prohibit use of poisons, prohibit mistreatment of prisoners and so on, all over the history. In Namibia, Germany has violated all those, hence Germany has got that responsibility to make good over and above the genocide that they committed. Okay, maybe in terms of conclusion, we have tried to look at the concept of reparations, that it is actually not new. There are methods, and it has also been shown that on September 27, 1951, at the highest political level, the Bundestag, through an act of parliament, Bundeserschädigungsgesetz, decided to compensate Wiedergutmachung, the Jews, for all sorts of atrocities committed against them. They have not done so in Namibia, hence we continue to demand that to be also for justice in Namibia. German attitude is only a procrastination of the inevitable. The inevitable is reparations. Hence, we also conclude that von Trotha was only a messenger of the state, and therefore the genocide cannot be ascribed to von Trotha, but to the German state. Recommendations? Well, okay, let me give the recommendation, just one recommendation, very strong one. I wish to humbly request and recommend to the current German generation not to follow the intransigence of the past generations of Germany that committed genocide against our people, and the generation that is refusing to pay reparations to the Namibian people. My recommendation is that disassociate yourself, pay reparation. It's good for our future, it's good for our future. I thank you.
Maamberua, Applaus bitte.